Welcome to the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club. The first category riders in that yellow getting a fantastic start here as this bunch heads out from the start line. 2 full laps. Only 2 riders on the right of your screen, Gilson and Bjarhead. They have behind potentially 5 riders who work together to close that gap down. And if these 5 riders can work as a bunch, then they have the opportunity, they have the potential to close that gap down. Up against riders that are of a similar level, you just need to look here at Catherine Fua. Fua has been battling up at the front, but she's still got a round with her. Even though she's gone backwards, she's got Gallagher just in front, and Catherine needs to push now. Looks like Gallagher is trying to extend the gap up at the front, and she won't be gasping for air as she comes in to the finish here in MyWhoosh. She goes in between the barriers now. She lines up, she sees the gantry, and once she goes through that arch, it is going to be a race victory. 2 out of the 3 qualifying races on the Sunday Race Club go to Rebecca, and her time looks like a 1:09. So hello and welcome to the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club with me, Matt Payne. I'm here bringing you the action for qualifier race number 4 of 4 qualifying races. So last chance saloon for our riders to qualify for our prize money final that is next Sunday. We've got some amazing riders lined up and already down on those start pens. We've got some strong teams who, as you saw, were battling it out last week. The course they take on is our 35-kilometer course, a total elevation of 720 meters. Along the way, 7 individually timed segments of varying lengths. Those segments will bring us a snapshot at segments through the course, those 7 individual areas of the course being tested and checked, and making sure that we get those riders at times on the way through. Really good to see who's going quick, who's going slowly on the way through, and which teams are represented in a potential breakaway, which this course will suit up until the point we hit the final climb. If you're watching the men's race earlier, you'll know exactly how decisive that can be. If you haven't seen it, make sure you subscribe to MyWhoosh. Have a look back at all of our race videos, as well as the segments from Jeff. And our strong teams are here today once again. Remember, we have 3 categories of teams, starting with our category 1 riders. Now, of these riders, the teams that have won before, we have Spartan Obstacles, Las Colombianas, and Looper. Today's team win should go to Las Colombianas because they are the team filled in the biggest number of riders. But watch out for our individual riders in there. Marlene Bjarhead, she has got a 2nd and a 1st place in the last 2 qualifiers. Watch out for Spartan Obstacles, Gemma Brogan, top 3 in qualifying number 1. She needs to get a good ride in today to qualify as well. And of course, Looper have been particularly strong with that win in the 2nd of our qualifying races. Carly Francis and Marcel Smithers not outside the top 10 when they've ridden. So really strong riders in category 1, our top category with that yellow jersey. Below them, we have our category 2 riders. Now, those are the riders who sit below that marker. They are in a green jersey, as you can see, and more squads in this one with wins previously. 2 wins for the strong women's team, a win and a 3rd place for Tri Women. 2nd place for the Team Fitness 10, but don't discount any of these riders on the way through, particularly when you've got riders like Martina Giriani, who took the win last week. We've got Hernandez for the strong women's team. She took the win in round number 1. Golden Light, individual rider, can never be discounted because she was 4th in round number 1, but a real mix of riders. Will it be Alessia and Tico, teammate of Giorni, coming in to the finish? Tri Women could potentially make this 3 team podiums out of 3. Behind our category 2 riders come our category 3 riders. These are riders just starting, or the riders who have yet to move up and take it above the level to take them into category number 2. They're in the blue jerseys. Some great teams in here again. Team RT Ladies beat the Cycle Hub women's team in the 2nd of our qualifiers. And we've got to say, Maria Jose Zabala taking the win last week, looked particularly strong. She was third in the 2 preceding qualifiers, so she's got to be odds on of getting up in the podium. However, going to be challenged by Annalena Tejeros, one of our individual riders. Watch out for Erin Poulton. She took second place in the last qualifier as well. But all of these were riders, particularly the teams from Climbers Girls, Team RT Ladies, the Cycle Hub, and of course Slam Bike Shop Team 2 could figure in the results. Our riders in all of our categories getting nervous, and that clock is ticking to the start line. We join them with 23 seconds to go. You can just see the riders just starting to power up. They're going to start winding into the start, and we're going to be joined today by a new voice on the Sunday Race Club. We're going to be introducing them very shortly. Someone who knows exactly what it feels like to be down in the start line as the clock ticks down, and away they go. Who's got the fast start? That is a flying kick out from the line by Cinelli from the second category riders, but you can just see Para and Dijkstra very quick off the blocks. All these riders know that they've got to be up there. And definitely a time to bring in my co-host here today. Welcome to the women's race, Emma. So Emma Martin here, a rider, racer, coach, as well as manager, event organizer, many hats that you wear in cycling. But today, joining me as our second voice here on the YouTube coverage.
Hi, thanks, Matt, for introducing me there. It's great to be with you all today. And wow, what a start have we seen today in terms of flying off that start line, and really got some momentum going on that start in that kick.
Definitely. I'm interested to see we've got such a wide mix of riders in there. You got to be really very, very fast off from the line. You can't afford to ease off the pressure at all as you go out and around the course here today, because it is really critical to be in that pack when you come off from the start. Timing your kick off that start key, but then being able to push with the leaders, as we see Carly Francis in here, Dijkstra in here. Now, Dijkstra, a very, very fast rider for the Toyota Cryo RDT squad. She was 9th place last time, but looks like she has definitely decided she wants to be in this leading group.
It is, and that you're quite right, Matt. That kick off the start line is so important in terms of group selection and getting into that front pack, which is all important in terms of esports racing.
The front pack is key, isn't it? And you've got to kick off the start. You've got to go fast, but you also don't want to then go into the red zone.
Quite right. You know, there's no rolling start here on MyWhoosh on the Sunday Race Club. It really is a kick from the gun. But that pack is starting to form, and we can see Jojo Bauer on the right-hand side of the screen with the yellow jerseys of our Cat 1 riders interspaced with some of the green jerseys of our Cat 2 riders, as that front pack is trying to come together now.
It is, and at the moment you can just see 2 split screens. Jojo Bauer, regular race winner, very fast, a rider, a 3rd place in qualifier. Number 3, she's got to push on. Now, Jojo Bauer is one of those riders who needs a ride in this. You need 2 qualifying rides to go into the final, and Jojo Bauer, very, very strong on that final climb. I'm sure we'll see if Jojo's going to be able to do that. Interesting to see, currently sitting at about 150 beats per minute, so not pushing too far, I think, into that red zone. Jojo regularly pushing it into the higher rev range. Now, let's see if she can continue this onwards.
Yeah, this has settled down really quickly, hasn't it? We're now just under 2K into the race, and we're following Jojo Bauer, and you can see her heart rate is really steady at around 140, and that pack is well and truly riding together.
They are riding together. Great to see that they are pushing on as they are. Left-hand side of your screen, you can see some of our 3rd category riders. Great to see that we're in with Diane down here. Diane Grace at Burnout at the moment, just going up through that straight. So we're going to see Burnout's in there. She's with Maria Sanguid. Sanguid actually taking 2nd place in the 3rd category riders in round number 2. But we've got people like Nicole Lustry in here. Now we're in with Maria, and Maria Sanguid in here. 1.9K covered, kicking out 144 watts, 152 beats per minute, and motoring along at 29 kilometers per hour. She goes into segment number 1. So our riders at the moment on their way through segment 1. Emma, how long are these initial segments?
Yeah, so we've got 7 segments today in this 35K women's race, Segments 1 through to 5 are all 1k in distance, and then segment 6 and segment 7 are our two longer segments at 5k per piece. And as you can see there on the screen, the first 6 segments take place over our rolling ground, and that final segment is really the start of that big climb.
It is indeed. So, a quick reminder on your screen of what's coming up. We're back in with Jojo Bauer in this leading group. So, if you're just joining us here on the Sunday Race Club on MyWhoosh, don't forget, of course, to not be late, make sure you tick the subscribe button on the YouTube feed. That will notify you when we're going live, not just with the Sunday Race Club, but with all of our feeds on there now. This bunch is starting to stretch out, and we are still seeing what I think is going to be about 15 to 20 riders at the moment in this pack, a mix of first and second category riders. And we have less first category riders this time around as we go into the fourth of the qualifiers. It's definitely made a difference. But the riders through segment 1, Emma, take us through the stats and what they mean.
Yeah, and I think you can see there from the results of segment 1 that are up in front of us at the moment, there is a big pack of riders riding through that segment, from Cincinnati in first place through to Reynard, who's 12th on our screen in front of us. There's a very small difference in times going through that first segment, as those riders all ride as one large pack. Though do note there, Matt, if you take a look at the teams, why we've got Tri-Women in first place with Sinelli, actually, we've got Las Colombianas in 5th, 6th, and 7th. So riding together as a group.
And Dorothy Gonzalez Arroyo, as well as Barragan, Rosalina Barragan, and Jojo Bauer all together in there. With 20 riders in there, it doesn't cover all the riders, of course, but it does give us a really good snapshot of those gaps. And the Tri-Women's Elena Shinari coming through 142. Good time. And just seeing our leader here on our screen. She's currently sitting at the back of that pack. So 18 riders in that group with Shamileva, 20 seconds back. The nearest rider's getting on the back, but great ride by Elenia. She's got in, she's stayed in with this group. She's working well. Got a mix of second category riders in that battle, which is really interesting to see who is riding strongest in here. So we'll see who is going to take away top spot when we get to the end of this 35k, but with over 10% of the course already covered, 6.5 minutes coming up on the clock. You can see this group has come together, and there's a major advantage in sitting in that group. You've got to get your watts down and rest as much as possible. But it looks to me like Janelle, after being able to stay in that package, just finding this pace hot, the black numbers of watts showed that she's not in that draft yet. She needs to jump into the draft, and we're just seeing Maria Santiago just dropping back at the moment as well. Now, I think this could well be that we are seeing that pace at the front just starting to get a little bit hotter and just starting to stretch these riders and really make them pay.
You see, that's it, isn't it? When you drop the group, actually, Matt, what you're seeing is you start to have to make a much bigger effort to close it back down. Maria Santiago there putting in close to 5 watts per kilo there for a short dig to get back into that group. And now she's back in it, we'll see her sit back up a little bit and her watts start to drop to around 3.
Well, that shows you it is about being able to pull into that pack and rest, not do too much work, and feathering your effort. That fine tuning cannot be overestimated. Sorry, how important that is, because being able to tune your effort makes a difference. Great to see that we've got Cristobal Grace Paolo over the left of our screens here, a rider who was 4th in qualifier number 2, 11th in qualifier number 1, a rider who's really strong.
Yeah, and this Category 3 race that we're seeing on the left-hand side, you know, it's a really big race field today. Our Category 3 riders riding in the blue jerseys, and here we can see mixed in with some Category 2 riders in the green and Category 1 in the yellow jersey. But we've got 23 riders in Category 3 on the start line today.
So that's a big part of our race field, and just riding in with Michelle Manalang at the moment. So it looks like Manalang, a rider who's been top 15 in that category, nicely in this mix in with Gallego at the moment. Gallego, a top 5 position in the second of our qualifying races. So this group are working well together, and this is where you learn your skills, isn't it? It's not necessarily when you're at the front of the race in the yellow jerseys, in the green jerseys, as we see on the right-hand side. A lot of the skills these riders are exhibiting is the skills that they learn when they first start off riding.
Oh, completely and utterly, Matt. Riding MyWhoosh platform, there's some real technique and skill to it. And learning that technique and skill and understanding the dynamics is really, really important. Understanding how to draft and where to place yourself to make the most of that draft. Understanding the process of how acceleration benefits your racing and not just out and out power. And learning all of these tactics and techniques is really, really important when you're riding MyWhoosh.
Well, one rider who we know has got those tactics does is a Novelina Kekkonen. Kekkonen, a really great rider. We've seen her as a second category rider battling for the race win repeatedly. And that means that we know that she is a rider who can take on the best riders in that race field, but maybe just like that little bit more. But some amazing athletes in here now. We're going to get the next entry into the segment. So our next segment coming through, we're at 5.5k. And if my maths is correct, that makes us into segment number 2, Anna.
It does indeed. We are on the second of our 1K segments. And I'm not sure we're going to see many fast times going through it looking at this group map, because actually this sort of group of 18 riders seem to have made the decision that they're going to sit at a really comfortable pace and ride together.
Well, it may well mean that Maria Santiago, who's currently at 5 seconds, Lenia Cinelli, who is behind currently about 15 seconds down, might have a chance to push back into this group. So really interesting as these riders continue to push on. We are seeing a really fast move from the riders behind. They're really trying to push the pace up to try and get back in. The leaders on the front, as Emma just saying, just being a little bit more circumspect in their efforts, and that can work off it because it saves you energy. It could well be it's not going to pay into their hands. And again, if you're an attacking rider, if you're not a rider who's strong on the climbs, then you're going to need to start putting in those efforts really early on, because you're going to want to really make life difficult for the riders behind. Left-hand side of your screen, just watching a mix of our first, second, and third categories with Sora Giraldo in there. So Giraldo at the moment, the rider for the Las Colombianas squad, just in front of Tangelon, runner Tangelon, who is in and racing in our category 2 competition. And then, of course, you've got Zabala, who we're in with our third category rider. That group breaking up a lot more than we are seeing the breakups in the riders behind. And it certainly looks to me as we move in, and not going to be long before we're at the end of this segment, that we are seeing these riders progressing pretty quickly on the way through here. But one or two riders not making that initial selection. Emma, what would your tactic be if you're in the position that we see Sora in here? Just distance behind this leading group, who look to be pretty strong as they come to the end of the segment.
That's it. It's interesting, isn't it? If you've not made that big pack at the front, there's lots of ones and twos, as we've just seen there out on the road behind them. And there's some choices to be made in terms of your race tactics if you are gapped from the group. Do you sit up and wait for a couple of riders behind you and form a small group of your own and then benefit from the draft? Or do you push on? And that's a choice you need to make whilst you're racing.
Indeed, and we're just seeing those stats coming in and through at the moment. We know there are 17 riders in this pack. Emma, take us through the stats.
Yeah, so we're seeing first place through that 1K segment from the strong women's rider Maria Santiago, coming through in 2:11. 2 seconds, well, nearly 3 seconds behind actually, is where we see second, third, and fourth riders coming through as a pack there. So we've got Leonie Strata, Jojo Bauer, Kekkonen, Para, Biagé, all coming through just in second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
And interesting to see Los Colombianos now getting a little bit more spread out on the way through here. And those time gaps opening as the pressure put on through segment number 2. So our leaders time at 2:11 going through. And that prediction of Emma of the time, definitely the case. Watching a little bit further back down through that race field, the riders who were in the pack, people like Cinelli. Cinelli took 27 seconds longer to go through that segment on her own rather than in with this pack. So although this pack seems to be taking it a little bit more conservatively, they are moving up pace. You can just see Maria Santiago on the left of that screen. She's just being distanced from the pack at the moment. And I think Maria Santiago could well be in trouble. We've seen a yo-yoing on and off the group, but that gap seems to have opened now. It's 6 seconds to our leaders behind her, Rosalina Barragan. Well, Barragan was about 5 seconds, 10 seconds slower going through, but we saw Chinelli going through much slower through that last segment. And that's just a short 1K snapshot of the racing at the moment. The leaders, though, Jojo Bar moving back up through this pack, and Leone Dijkstra looking like she means business here today. Interesting to see that Ursula Bardowskaya in the mix, not doing too much on the front. Bardowskaya really is a rider to watch. She's been top of 5. She was 5th in qualifier number 2. 4th in qualifier number 1, but we know that Bardowskaya could be the rider to beat in this when the pressure goes on. So interesting to see whether she can do it. One rider who is coming back, and this yo-yoing is continuing here for Maria Santiago. Now, why are we seeing this, Emma?
Yeah, no, I've been watching Maria quite closely here, and you can see every now and then she's just putting a little bit more pressure on the pedals and tipping up to 3.5 to 4 watts per kilo. And slowly she's coming back to this group. She's been quite clever about this, though, Matt, because she can clearly see the watts they're putting out as a group. She can clearly know that they're moving as a pack and a draft. But she is indeed just lifting her pace a little bit and closing that gap. Though interesting to see, her cadence is down at around 50.
That's almost like a gym session. That's almost doing like one pedal. It's less than one pedal rev a minute, and that is a low pedal. But riders quite often will do some recovery and will change their pace. If you're a really fast revving rider, sometimes it just pays to just back off those revs, just take a little bit of a rest. And if you compare that across to Rosalina Barragan, who's on the left of our screens at the moment, 96 revs per minute. That's definitely my kind of style. You're revving it round, trying to keep it high, and using those legs. To Santiago at 45 revs per minute. That is a very slow cadence relatively, but if it works for you, and different riders are very different, aren't they? Different people have different styles. Being able to respond to pace, generally on an attack, you would be looking, most riders sitting at about that 75 to about 85 marker, up to about a 100 in terms of cadence.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? So two very, very different styles on our screen there in terms of riding style and cadence.
Now, just taking a look across into some more of the riders in this leading group, which does actually have, I think, more second category riders than first category riders. Angel and Hadlock are just leading on the right hand side of your screen. You just seen Olivieri coming through to the front. So that battle for our first placed second category rider at the moment mixed in with the battle for the overall race win. And I think this could well be the case until we hit the climb. Usually, when we hit the climb, that is when we see the leaders go clear.
I think I'm in agreement with you, Matt. You know, we've got 17 Category 2 riders on the start list today and only 10 Category 1 riders. So not surprising that our lead group at the moment is made up much more of those green jerseys. But I do agree. I think by the time we get to that 28.8k stage where we start to go uphill towards the finish, that's where we're going to see our Cat 1 riders put some power down.
And I think that really the time between now, which is at 9.5k, and the riders who are currently a little bit further back. I mean, the distance is only going to grow, isn't it, as we move towards the finale?
Yeah, it is. And that's what we're going to see. So we've still got quite a lot of distance here to travel. So as you can see on the split screen at the moment, the Category 3 race group that we've got out there is currently at 8.2k, whereas our lead pack here is at 9.8. So we're already seeing, you know, over 1.5k distance between our two races here. But that's will just exacerbate before we get to the end.
Indeed, we're just going to come through our next segment. This is going to be segment number 3, and it looks like that segment coming through a little bit quicker that time. The pace, I think, just picked up a little, but the pack pretty close together, Emma.
Yeah, and I think that pace has picked up because of the terrain, actually, Matthew, when you look at the watts per kilo there. So much more of a downhill segment, I think, than uphill, looking at the effort it's put into the faster time. So 127 across the line. Leone from Toyota Cryo RDT takes the first place there, closely followed by Jojo Bauer from Los Colombianos. And we're seeing these team places change and mix around in this lead group as they come through these segments, but no more than a second splitting first to 12th place.
Well, that is very indicative of a pack that's working together well. Just taking a little bit of a look down, we have 16 riders left in that leading pack, so it is a little bit of an attritional type race where the attack is not a dynamic one on the front. Dijkstra, the rider who took that fastest time on the way through, very, very quick and working very fast. But her heart rate, interestingly, I noticed was relatively higher to somebody like Jojo Bowers, now behind, just watching these chasers coming in and through. And you can see Antico Barragan and Co just making the way in and through the line there. They're going to be putting up a time on there, but what they got to do, they've got to keep on pushing through because we have seen our leading 16 riders really motoring their way in and through that section. And I think all we're going to see now is rider after rider after rider start to be distanced from the leading pack. You can just see that churning, that movement of the riders as they work their way through the pack. Riders pushing on to get towards the front to maybe sit wheel number 2 or 3, get that green draft showing behind the riders having to match that, and it's very difficult if it's a 1 or a 2. Chinelli and Barragan are working very, very well. You can just see Rosalina Barragan on the left-hand side of your screen. They're motoring. They're doing 39 kilometers an hour, 36k for the riders on the right of your screen, but a difference because the riders on the left of your screen are going downhill slightly. The riders on the right going on a slightly draggy uphill. My definite nemesis, anything that drags uphill, it has to be said. Give me a steep kick and then a bit of chance to get my breath back. No chance for our riders here today on the Sunday Race Club here on MyWhoosh. And don't forget, you can follow all of our social media. That is MyWhoosh on Instagram and Facebook, my_whoosh on Twitter. Don't forget, whilst you're on there, you can find me on social media. I'm Matt Fixer Payne. And Emma, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Biking Emma. Though I'm really watching here with Jojo Bauer in here. I'm looking at this in this pack and her heart rate at the moment, and this must be no more than zone 2 riding for Jojo at the moment. So this is really, really easy stuff for her. Let's not forget in 2018, 2019, Jojo was in the top 20 in the New Zealand Road Race Championships. So she's a class athlete, and at the moment, this is really steady state.
So you talked about zone 2 there. Is this like Area 52 where you disappear and never to be seen again? Explain what a zone would mean in terms of the work that's been done by Bauer.
Yeah, so in simple terms, if we look at different zones as different levels of effort, and zone 1 being the easiest and zone 6 being the hardest, currently Jojo is sat at a really comfortable level.
Okay, so she's sitting at what you would expect to be zone 2, so that's a comfortable level. How hard do you have to work then to move from one zone to the other?
Now that would depend on whether you were looking at your doing your zones by heart rate or doing your zones by wattage. I'm sat here looking at her heart rate. So her heart rate to her power, very, very comfortable at around 131 beats per minute at 2.7 watts per kilo. We know she is an elite level athlete. She's a category 1 rider. She's going to have range on that heart rate. She's going to have range on that power. And we've seen her comfortably put out 4.5, 5, 6 watts per kilo in other races where she's taken the top 3. So for her, this type of effort is really, really straightforward. For other riders, if we were looking at, you could see them putting out 2.7, 2.8, 2.9 watts per kilo of a heart rate of around 164 or 165. You'd know the effort was much harder for that level of power.
And it is individual, and there are different levels depending on which training regime you follow. Don't forget, of course, lots of great training programs on the MyWhoosh platform. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of different workouts, thousands of workouts on there. We've got some amazing coaches. We've got Kevin Poulton as our main man when it comes to designing those training sessions. Whether you want to train for riding on the Tour de France, like Tadej Pogacar, or you've seen Sophie riding for the ADQ Emirates team riding in the Tour Femme, or whether, of course, you are wanting to beat your fastest time over 100 miles, whether you want to get a better sprinter. Lots of great training programs on there. So make sure you do download the app. get it up on to your mobile device. Don't forget, of course, it's now also available on PC, on a Windows-based device as well, so you can put it onto your machine and then have multiple screens running. You can ride like a lot of our riders who are racing at the moment with multiple screens, so you can be not just watching what you're doing in the race, but you can also be watching what's happening elsewhere. Now, Dijkstra, 6 watts per kilo. All of a sudden, we're starting to see a little bit more of a wind up there as she came through. The average watt is quite low, but Dijkstra just put in a little bit of a kick, maybe just stretching her legs.
Yeah, and we've just gone through segment 4 there. So that's the fourth of our 1K segments, and not much difference again. The pack going through within 2 seconds of each other, but really interesting to see Dijkstra now in terms of actually putting some power out and seeing whether they can start to move this group.
And those times are just under 2 minutes on the way through. So moving, but not necessarily absolutely rocketing along. Now, in terms of those power levels you were talking about, Emma, there, we're seeing what's sitting around about between about 170-ish to 162. I think we've seen right through to 208. We're also seeing a real variety of heart rates on there, but we're not seeing the 170, 180s, except for Angie Para. Now, Para is a second category rider, having to put out 191 watts, 3.1 watts per kilo, but 178 beats per minute. So I guess that's indicative for a second category rider, maybe having to work harder than the first category riders in that same group.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with what you're saying there, Matthew, but also what we need to remember is heart rate is very personal. For all we know, Para can hit 200 with a heart rate, whereas one of the other riders may actually have a maximum heart rate of around 175.
And that is definitely going to be telling now. We're seeing that little push on start to put some gaps into this group. This is a dangerous split that's starting to occur. Bauer, Bjarhed, Gonzalez Rue, Dijkstra, currently with Bardeskaya chasing, Brogan chasing. They are trying to come back across. We were sitting at 3 watts per kilo. We're now sitting at 4s and 5s as this group starts to break. And you can see what damage has been done. All of a sudden, Bauer, Bjarhed, Gonzalez Rue, and Bardeskaya have decided, right, time's up, ladies and gents. We are going for this. It is time. Hang on to your seats if you're watching at home. We're going to start to wind this up, and they've put in enough of a dig to distance Gemma Brogan. Gemma Brogan, fast finisher, somebody you wouldn't want to tow into a sprint finish. We've distanced Carly Francis, who's been spat back with distancing riders like Santiago, along with Antico, who are the riders who are in that second category. So we are now starting to see this open up, and I think this is really indicative now. Marlene Bjarhed, a really quick rider. We have seen her be right at the top of the tree here. Second place in the last qualifier, top spot in qualifier number 2. What do we know about Marlene?
Well, Marlene is from Sweden, and she was this year in 2022 on the Swedish UCI Esports World Championships team. So she's really got some form this year, and one of the best esports riders in her country.
And if she's racing the World Championships, I'd imagine right up there. Do we know where she finished? No, we don't. There you go. That's our homework for the rest of the week going into next week. We're going to find out exactly where Matt Online finished in those results. Certainly, to be part of that team, to get that selection is always difficult. And of course, it doesn't matter whether you're from Sweden, like Marlene is, where presumably, this is a bit of a guess, she was hiding from potentially fog, rain, and colder temperatures, or whether you are in the Emirates. And of course, if you're an Emirati at the moment, you're going to be hiding from the scorching temperatures. We had a little glimpse of it here in the UK over the last week, but whereas over there the climate, the buildings all used to be up in the 40 and 50 C, here in the UK it was 37 to 40 degrees, and I must admit I was out riding in those temperatures, and I don't mind the heat. I actually quite enjoy it, and I was suffering. My heart rate was pushed right up, so having somewhere to be able to ride well makes a difference. Now we are watching Brogan coming back towards our leaders at the moment, 5th place on the course, chasing those 4 leaders. I think Brogan's going to get back in touch here, and now she makes the catch. So the racing continues onwards here. We're at 16K covered, just coming up for half an hour of racing. Our race leaders clear at the front of the race. The chasers behind, you can see just how fast those gaps have opened up. We're talking 20 plus seconds in a very, very short space of time. Our category 1 riders Maybe they just needed a coffee. They maybe we just needed that little bit of a kick. But it can also be tactical, can't it? You can just warm up into the race. Some riders are great. They like the proverbial light switch. You just hit them, bing, they're on. Or they can be a rider who it's more of a dimmer switch, and they gradually start to get warmed up and then get quicker and quicker as the race goes on.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see, isn't it? Sort of 15Ks in, the category one riders decided, oh, right, that's it. We're going to race now. We've done our warm up. We've been having a nice social, comfortable section with in a group of around 18, and they've sat up and realised there's a race on, and there's 20K to go, and they might as well start turning their legs over and putting some power down. So we can see now that this Cat 1 group of 5 riders has moved clear now. And the group behind, mainly it's our category 2 racers that have been left behind.
It is, and behind them, just see on the right hand side of our screen, our third category rider is going through Cabinetta, a rider who is top of 15 in that category, regularly seen 13th and 15th place. She's got company there as well, and that is really key. And riding with the group is important. Now, as we go through the end of this segment, this is going to be telling the pace that these row in and through. Coming up on our screens, you can just see we have 5 riders now coming through, and that gap has opened up behind. Emma, run us through some numbers there. They're a bit different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, and segment 5 is the last of our 1K segments. And what we can see there, Matt, is that first group go through, followed by the rest. And actually, do you know what? This is a really interesting story, because while we've got Brogan going through in first place, if you actually look at the times, that second group of riders on the road are moving now at the same pace as the first group of riders on the road. The second group have gone through half a second slower than the front group. So whilst that front group have made the damage to start with, they're not pulling away any further at the moment.
Well, really interesting to see, but we can also see the leaders have now established that gap. One rider who wasn't in that group was Dish, so it's really interesting to see that she has been pushed down out of that leading group. So Leonie Dijkstra not up in that leading group as she came through behind, and we are going to see if people like Brogan from Spartan Obstacles, Jojo Ba from Las Colombianas, will it be Gonzalo Ruiz, her teammate, or will Barda Sky be in to take the win? Can they beat Bjarhed? Marlene going to be as the rider to beat. So, really interesting stats. You want to catch up with all of the stats like you can see on your screen at the moment. Don't forget to go on to MyWhoosh.com, hit results. The results, first of all, live, then unofficial, and then official. Now, we tick onwards. We have motored through that section very, very quickly indeed. And remember, this course, all of the climbing is at the end, and that affects how you ride the race, doesn't it, Emma?
Oh, it really does. As we can see from the screen in front of us, we've got our first 5K segment, number 6, coming up and not too far, leading us into the mountains, where we've got over 500 meters of elevation in the last 6K. Now, that is a really big climb, and how you've ridden the rolling terrain to get there versus the effort you are going to put in at the end of the race for that last 6K. That's the tactics and the balance you need to be thinking about.
Now it is, and I think the tactics is going to be really interesting behind our 5 leaders. So we've got Bjarhed, Barda Sky, Gonzalo Rue, we've got Brogan and Bauer leading the race out there on the right-hand side of your screen. Left-hand side of your screen, the chase is not coming from first category riders. It's coming from those people who are battling for second category honours. Jarioni, the rider who took the win last time out in category number 2 for the Tri-Women squad on the front. Olivieri, a teammate of Gironi, going through and working hard in there as well. You can see that the work is being done by our second category riders, and Martina is clearly on a mission here. She's working really well, and you've got to say the Tri-Women squad with Antico, Gerioni, Olivieri, and Cinelli, so strong. When we come to our prize money final, surely the Tri-Women are going to be the team to beat. Strong Women have had more wins so far, but they're looking good here at the moment, aren't they, the Tri-Women?
They are, but there's 9 category 2 riders in what is the front bunch of the category 2 race, Matt. You know, and they are over half race distance now. So that group of 9 riders are really going to have to start thinking about what tactics they're going to use and how they're going to ride the rest of this race. And we can start to see the attacks coming from those Category 2 riders, because they're the ones who want to break this group up, not those two Category 1 riders.
No, the Category 1 riders behind at the moment are basically going to be there just keeping the pace high enough so that they don't get caught from behind. They're going to be looking at those stats, looking at the splits. Now, here we go into the next of our segments for our race leaders. Bardaskaya, Bauer, Bjarhead, as well as Gonzalez Arroyo are the riders leading behind. Jarioni and Johan Hadlock and co are all chasing down, trying to keep that gap to a minimum, but they have their work cut out, and now they're not all that far behind. You can see they've just got into that segment, and that gap is not opened up, I think, particularly definitively. It's only a matter of a couple of 100 meters on the road, and I think Bauer now has decided enough is enough. We need to start to get going here. So Bauer putting in a little bit of a dig here, but the chase is coming. And look at the response there coming from Bardaskaya and Bjarhead. They weren't messing about. They very quickly wanted to close that gap down, and they've come up. Brogan now having to respond, and Gonzalez Ruiz has to pick up the pace as well. And this yo-yoing, it does have the opportunity to break the group up. We are likely to see them caught out if they're careful. They've got to respond to every attack. If you let that gap go, it won't be long till you're swept up by the riders behind. It might show 30 seconds on the clock, but that's not very long if you get dropped by that leading group.
No, you've got to keep your eyes on the numbers and the riders around you, not just the racing on the screen, because those numbers on the right-hand side aren't just for our viewing pleasure. They're also there to give a really good indication to what's happening in front of you and behind you as a racer.
So we talk about disciplines like e-cycling, so riding on an esports platform, riding on MyWhoosh, being a very specific discipline, and each discipline has its own skills. So not only you've got to have, I guess, the legs and lungs, it's also about making sure that you have that perception, the awareness of what's going on around you. If you're riding on the velo, it's a bit of a joke that sprinters ride around looking backwards for 99% of the race, and they only look in front when it actually starts to hit. But it is very true. You've got to be able to do that when you're doing it on MyWhoosh. You're looking over your shoulder. Well, you can do it with your camera angles, but it's also about those time gaps, isn't it? And being aware of what's happening around you.
It is. It is very much about being aware of what's happening around you, knowing your competitors in terms of what they are capable of and whether they are a sprinter or whether they are a ruler and what kind of watts per kilo they're going to put through. But also about understanding the platform itself. As we've seen when we were just watching our Category 2 riders, and when we're seeing here now with this front group with Brogan coming back and up and through, managing your efforts so you don't snowball straight over the front of the group and go off of the front whilst you're trying to catch up from the back, and actually being able to judge and manage your efforts so your avatar is in the place you want it to be to benefit from the draft, for example, is actually a really technical skill.
It is. You can just see Brogan at the moment surfing the back of that group. She's trying to keep her numbers in the green, which is a draft. You can just see her pushing up to the back wheel of the group here. She's not going on to the front. She's been really, really smart. And my old adage of it's the smartest rider that wins really, I think, plays out here on MyWhoosh, because it is not just about having pure power. It's not just about having pure pace. It's also about kicking on and opening that gap up, and it's about knowing when to do it. Sitting on the group, look at Brogan. She's sat here. She's just staying out of trouble. She's not putting in too much effort. Really interesting to see. You look at Bauer. Bauer's really is. She is. She might be called JoJo. She could be called Yo-Yo, to be honest, because she yo-yos up and down. She puts the power in. She eases off. She powers on. She puts loads of attacks up and down non-stop. And I think that is, for me, a great way to ride in terms of keeping us entertained, but may well waste some energy for Bauer. We'll see if that comes to pass when we go on to the climb. 22 kilometers coming up for our riders. They approach the 40-minute marker. Don't forget, of course, our leading group of 5 broke clear of this chasing pack at Kekkonen that we're riding with in the middle of this group. A mixture of first and Category two riders. So first and second category riders are leading. Second category riders, our top riders, are going to come out of this group because behind them the gaps really have exploded, and that wedge that was inserted on that initial kick out of the line has been driven home, and those gaps have expanded. It is a very roller coaster type course, lots of slight ups and downs, keeping moment in speed. It's only when we get onto the very final climb of the day that we see big gradients and really, really massive steep sections, which are going to test our riders on the way through.
They are. And I think that second group of riders now on the road, looking at where they are, have really decided that they are the second group of riders and they're not going to even attempt to make the catch. They're going to race this race amongst themselves and not bother that front group.
Well, going to be interesting to see now. We're just looking at our third category riders, and this again another great battle in our third category racing. And this is one of the great things about MyWhoosh. We've got riders battling it out. We can see our third category riders in here. We've got Dagio, we've got Tajeris, we've got Zabala in there. We've got Barco, all battling it out, and they're fighting for position. Shamileva is up the road by about, I think it's about 1 minute or so. They know that these positions are going to see. It doesn't matter whether you are the first rider at the very front of the race or you're the last rider in the race by usual position, that you're going to get a result. And that result, it tells you where you're at, what power you've done. And that means everybody can ride this platform. It doesn't matter where you finish. Right, jumping on and riding. You're going to be beating everybody who's sat at home watching and not actually riding. You're going to be beating us in the studio as you make your way in and through. You're getting the kilometers in. You're learning and getting the experience of riding on the platform. But you're racing against people as well, which is amazing and great fun. And it does mean it's key. Everybody can jump on, can't they, Emma?
They can, and I think that's the joy actually of this Sunday Race Club, is the fact that you've got the three categories racing together. So you've very clearly identified who's in your race category, but the opportunity to ride against other groups of riders and progress and try and challenge yourself. Always somewhere, everybody is having a race within this race. And that, I think, is the real value of the Sunday Race Club.
And I think it's very true what you say about this. You're racing against people and progressing. It's a really old adage in cycling. Don't get faster by riding with people who are slow. You get faster by riding with people who are faster than you. They just drag you on, that little bit of encouragement, that hanging onto that wheel a little bit longer, that hanging in the fight, in the battle, just that little bit more. It pulls you on. That experience watching how people ride seeps in. We don't need to actually think about it. It just seeps into your consciousness. And for me, that is really key. That's what we're seeing. It might be a really old phrase. My dad taught me that, and that's now 84 and still riding a bike. His words were, "You won't get quicker by riding with people who are slower than you." And he was dead right, and it still applies today. And that's X amount of decades later. It's still true, and it is still key. And I'm sure if I asked my dad, he was probably told it by a coach back in 1950. So it shows you those markers, those basic fundamentals are being played out here.
It is, or they are. But one of the other things I think I really love about this is the fact that you've got individual riders and you've got team riders, and you've got that peer support and that group with you. You know, some of these riders in teams will be talking to their teammates, having conversations, making decisions about what they're going to do today and how they're going to ride. And that social camaraderie part of being part of a social community, as well as racing your bike and racing your bike as hard as you can to the best of your ability. That's what it's all about.
Definitely. And now we have what is basically a 5 up time trial on the front. A partial truce, I think, has been called between these five riders, officially or unofficially, as they ride on. They know they can't afford to relax too much. They are continuing to open the gap on the riders behind. Left hand side of your screen, the riders from sixth position right the way down, they are battling it out. Now, our leaders are quickly motoring on. They're going to be hitting our next segment. This is coming very quickly indeed. So, as they come through, our five leaders are through. Emma, run us through our riders and anything that springs out to you in terms of stats there.
Yeah, so our first five riders are through segment 6, which is our 5K segment, the first of our two 5K segments today in 8:51. And we've got Spartan Obstacles in first place with Gemma Brogan, followed by Bardovskaya, Gonzalo Rue, Biade, and Bauer there. That group of five. Interestingly, we're seeing the difference in watts those riders are putting out, but Brogan there really actually has been sat in that pack and drafting most of that. Take a look at that 2.8 watts per kilo against the lower threes of the rest of the group that she's with.
And as that screen fills, very interestingly, initially we were seeing the lead group come through mixed in, very similar times. This time round, big difference in time. Leaders coming through 8:51, the fastest time from Brogan, but all of the riders within 0.659 of a second. Behind Emma, how far back are they?
Yeah, that second group now are slowing down, or should we say the first group are speeding up, because there's a 17, 18-second gap now between the pace at which that first group covered 5K and the pace at which the second group of riders covered 5K.
Now, you have to forgive my very shonky maths when it comes to this, but 5K, 15 seconds, that's 3 seconds a K. It's not huge. At 21 seconds, that would be a little bit different. I'll be coming through with a bigger pace difference, but 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds a kilometre doesn't sound a lot, but you can travel 30, 40, 50 metres in that time.
Yeah, and it might not sound a lot, but I think it's really clearly determining where this race is going now, Matt. Because actually, whilst the first group had put an effort in to pull away, they were then maintaining that gap with the second group of riders. Now we're seeing a more consistent effort coming out of that front group, and we're seeing the second pack racing each other rather than trying to close the gap.
And I think it's very interesting as we come in now towards the conclusion of this race that Gemma Brogan is set on the back. She's being very smart here, not doing too much work. So a quick recap for you here on Sunday Race Club. We have a 35K course. Our riders have gone through the first 6 segments. When they hit segment number 7, they are about to enter what is the climb. This final climb here today is a brute of a climb. It's not the longest climb by any means on MyWhoosh. It is, however, a climb that has some very steep ramps and the step sections on the way through. So the flatter treads rather than the rising sections actually go slightly downhill, and that breaks up the rhythm. So tough climbing to come. Right hand side of your screen are our race leaders. They're at 26.2 kilometers. Left hand side of your screen, the chasing group that they broke clear of. Our leaders continue to extend their gap with 45 minutes of racing covered. The chasing group behind contains our second category race leaders, and the winner of the second category should come from this big pack of second category riders, with our 2 first category riders in there. And those riders at the moment able to sit in that group. That's going to be Leonie Dijkstra, Carly Francis in that pack. They are mixed in with those second category leaders. The right hand side of your screen, though, is your race lead, about 400 to 500 meters ahead of that chasing group. The gap is continuing to open up. We're at 26.7K for the race leaders. At 28.8, we're going to start to head into the mountain. And this is now going to be a very, very cagey game.
It is a very, very cagey game because they really are watching each other, Matthew. You can look at it and see the numbers that they're putting out there, taking a bit of a break, watching each other, eyeing each other up and seeing who's going to go first as they hit that climb.
Well, they are. They were looking at each other, but I think there's going to be a much harder selection to be made here. Great to see Elodie Reynard in here again. Elodie, another of our regular competitors, always in and racing on MyWhoosh, and great to see our regulars back once again. People like Novalinka Conan and Co. As we look at Reynard at the moment on that Colnago bike and choosing the team colours as well. And don't forget, of course, you can catch up with our sponsored riders who are sponsored by MyWhoosh, not just the riders who are finishing the Tour de France, but the riders who, of course, are riding for the ADQ Women's Squad. And that includes a rider you know well, Sophie Wright, who's going to be racing the Tour Femmes, Emma.
Yeah, so I've watched Sophie Wright come up through the mountain biking scene in the UK, Matthew. So a really, really lovely young rider, and obviously no longer a young rider, but really progressing well into the women's squads.
I think when you're as old as we are, you're allowed to call Sophie Wright young. It's fine. So we're watching the chasing pack here, and we're watching our regulars on the scene. Mix it up with some of our slightly newer riders. Good to see Connie Francis really getting at home in with the gang here. Remember, Carly Francis, Marcel Smith is part of that Looper squad, and the Looper squad actually taking the win in qualifier number 2. And Smithers a regular up there, 6th and 7th place in category 1 regularly in the racing so far, looking to get in another good ride. The leaders of the race, however, are up the road. They are nearly 300 metres ahead now. And the right-hand screen, taking a little bit of a look back, you can see behind our leaders, the chasers are not in sight. Just going to do a little bit of a check of the scenery coming past. Some great depth to the scenery here on MyWhoosh. It's one of the really important things. If you are lucky enough to be down at Eurobike in Frankfurt about a week ago to 10 days ago, you'll be able to go in and see the depth of the coverage. We're lucky in the studio. We have multiple high-definition monitors. We get to watch this real scenery come rolling past, and that depth, that real feel really does contribute to being in the racing. You are in the moment, a bit like when you're watching a film in the cinema. You don't realize you're sat in amongst 400 other people. You're sat in there and the world is rolling past you. Now that might be because you're sat in there as the film is on, or you're riding on MyWhoosh and the scenery is rolling past and you're in the middle of a battle, whether that's a battle for the race lead on the right of your screens or a battle for the top spot in our category 2 competition on the left of your screens.
Yeah, and both of these groups now looking like they're going to come down to the final climb, because no one's making a move, no one's actually putting the pressure down, and we are coming up towards the base of that climb.
And once that climb comes in, this is a very steppy climb. It is not smooth. It's not a consistent gradient. It steps up, it kicks upwards. It then has, after the rise, a tread, a flatter section that you put your foot on a set of steps. Well, these actually slope downwards, and a bit like trying to run up or walk up a set of steps where the steps are not even or not flat. That's exactly what this is like, because you go from kicking up to dropping down.
You do, but actually, again, we talked earlier about technique on MyWhoosh. There's a technique to riding that type of climb, because you get a push on, you get a slight rest, you get a push on, you get a slight rest, and you need to think about who it is you're racing against and what your skill set is as to how you use that to your benefit.
Well, let's see who's got that skill set, who's got this dialed. We've got a real mix of experience. Most of these riders, though, riding regularly for a long time now on the platform. The more you ride, the more you'll learn that. And watch the gradient. Top right-hand side, there's a grey box in the map view. Watch those colours. Gonzalez are sitting in here, but you're waiting to see the numbers skyrocket as the gradient goes up. So will the watts per kilo. Who is going to take this on? Who's going to launch that first probing attack? Or are we going to see a pace set now? Looks like Bjarhead the first to take up the pace. 5.5 watts per kilo. Now 6 watts per kilo. Now 6.3, 6.5. She's putting the pressure on. Who's going to step? I think Brogan is in trouble. She's starting to respond. Jojo Bauer, who we're riding with, well, she's making ground back up on them. Brogan and Bauer are coming back. Bauer is kicking to get back in this group. Brogan has got to respond. So Gemma Brogan at the moment, he's pushing at 6.5 watts per kilo. She gets back in together, just about onto the heels at 300 watts as they come in and past. And now it's Gonzalez Rue. They do that as it just starts to level. So you put in this immense effort to get back in. It levels off. Now you've got to wait. You've got to wonder, is anybody going to go on the flat? Are they going to go on the steep section? Me, I'll wait to the meanest, nastiest, hardest part of the course and then really kick it, because that's how to hand it back to somebody who hasn't got that explosive power. The pure climbers can do it, and the people with lots of power can do it. And that's why this course really is a great course to race on, because it suits all types of riders.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the Tour de France, haven't we? As we've been watching the Alpine and the Pyrenean stages with riders who go hard and put a real kick in, as opposed to Thomas, for example, who sits at one pace and keeps going at that pace and then catches slowly more at his own rate.
There seems to be a little bit of affinity there. Is that because that's a similar riding style to yours there, Emma?
Yeah, I let them get on with it at the front, and all the up and down and slowly, slowly.
Slowly,
Catch the
slowly.
group.
I think everybody will be slow in this leading group at the moment. They are absolutely motoring. Now, big kick coming up and through here. Brogan's just come through. I think she just played to get back onto the pack there, but she rolled on through, carried that momentum through, but maybe that time is a little bit off because now we're going to come into our next kicker. The leaders here coming up to 30 kilometers of racing covered. Remember, it's 35K in total, so 5,000 meters to go for our riders. What's 5,000 meters between friends? Well, it'll be the difference between winning and taking fifth place on here. That's what's going to separate out these riders who come into our next kicker together. The gradient is at 6.5% and quickly climbing. The chasers, they're about to come over the next rise. They're already on to the climb. The gap has opened up. We're looking to see if anybody has been shed, but it's still a big group of second category with those two first category riders mixed in with the group. Right-hand side of your screen, though, the gaps are opening again. And this time round, it's Jojo Bauer and Gonzalez Ruhr who have been distanced by Badovskaya and Bjarhed, but look at the response that comes now. Brogan absolutely rocketing past them and into this steeper section of the climb, but then takes it off a foot off the gas slightly here as Badovskaya goes over the top. This is attack after attack, and you'll see the different riders that pick in their moment. Bauer's coming after her, though, so it's Ursula Badovskaya in the race lead. We're coming up to 4.5 kilometers to go. Badovskaya has the gap. Bauer starting to close it down, but Bjarhed has got over the top of her. Bauer, I'm not sure, has got the pace and the power today to close that gap down. She's got to respond again. Badovskaya has gone and got hard here, and she's opened the gap. Bjarhed is the rider who's most likely to respond. Will she be able to do so? Bjarhed has got the wheel. Here she comes. She's on the heels of Badovskaya. Will she go over the top? Will she ease off? It looks like she's eased slightly, but Bauer has made contact. The gradient kicks again, though. This is fantastic stuff here on the Sunday Race Club, here on MyWhoosh. Brilliant riding at the moment. There's nothing to choose between them. But we have three riders at the front, Bjarhed, Bauer and Badovskaya, with Brogan at 3 seconds. Dorothy Gonzalez Ruhr, I think it is game over. It is 30 seconds now back to Dorothy Gonzalez Ruhr. You can see it on the left of your screens.
Yeah, and I think that is it is. 5 is now down to 3, or maybe actually 4 as we see Brogan catch. So 5 is now down to 4.
Well, Brogan's had more comebacks than status quo at the moment. She's got back onto the heels of those leaders time and time again. But can she find that killer riff to actually take herself up to the top of the charts and be number one? We're going to find out. We've not got longer to decide it. It is now less than 4 kilometers to the finish. We have 4 riders. Another big kick here. Brogan is continuing to push here, doing an amazing job. But can she answer the pace? Usually if you get dropped, it's for a reason. It's because you haven't quite got the pace and the kick. Bauer now leading. Badovskaya responds what looks to be fairly comfortably to that, as does Bjarhed. So, of our 3 riders, Jojo Bauer on the front, white cap, white socks on the gold bike. Looks like Bjarhed just dropping into second wheel with the blue cap, and Badovskaya just moves up alongside and past. So Bjarhed on that black Colnago with the blue cap, chasing Jojo Bauer with that gold-topped MyWhoosh bike with the white cap, but it is Bjarhed who's now gone over the top, and those gaps are really starting to open, and has a Badovskaya's legs gone pop. There's a slight gap opening up behind our race leader. It is Bjarhed. So Bjarhed in 1. It's Bauer in 2. Brogan, guess what she's doing? Yep, now coming back up onto this group. I tell you something, that's some serious grit and determination from Brogan.
You're not joking, are you? You know, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because every single time she comes up on that group, she snowballs over the top and then takes a small rest and goes back behind them. So I don't know whether she's playing with them, Matthew, or whether actually she's just waiting for a final kick at the finish.
Well, we're soon going to find out. Bardoskaya at the moment is steadily clawing away back in. It doesn't look far. Our time gaps are showing about 10 to 11 seconds. I take those with a pinch of salt because I think what you're going to find is that because of that variation in pace, because of the changing gradient, we're at 9% here for Bardoskaya. It drops to -2.5 in some of these downhill sections. It is going to yo-yo backwards and forwards. Bjarhed is continuing to push at the front. She's our solo leading rider. Then it is Bauer, Brogan, and Bardoskaya. But look at Marlena go. She's got the gap, or has she? They're coming back once again. They're closing down. They're going to go straight over the top here. So Jojo Bauer goes over, but she doesn't press it home. She doesn't carry that momentum through. Brogan is on the heels, but those three riders, I think, are clear.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to watch. If you watch up in the right-hand corner of your screen with the gradient changing, the riders are using the recovery part of the gradient to close down any gaps and to really push on. So whereas some of our riders are pushing on the steep gradient, using that shallower gradient or even the downhill to close the gap is what's being done here.
Well, I can only do that so many times. The finish of this climb, it climbs up to the line. There's no downhill run in. It just levels with about 4 or 5 pedal strokes over the top of the climb here in Alula on MyWhoosh on the Sunday Race Club, our women's race, the final qualifying opportunity for our riders, the final chance to get that mojo going by going up onto the top of the standings to take away the race win. Bauer now comes over the top. Bjarhed responds. Brogan is there. They're into the tunnels. This is where things get very interesting indeed because it means that we're nearly at 2.5K to go. And when we hit that 2.5K to go point, we've got a lot of changes of gradient very quickly indeed in this last 2,500 meters. So Bjarhed on the right of your screen leading. These tunnels are a multi-gradient tunnel. They change and they kick. Behind Bardoskaya now comes into the back of the tunnel as we see Bjarhed leading up here. Bauer in second place. Brogan in third place. The two chasers are literally fractions behind. They're only a few meters, a couple of bike lengths separating Bjarhed Bauer as they come through. Brogan pushing once again. Look at this. So Brogan at the moment on the black bike there with the white helmet closing, goes alongside Bauer. Bauer with the white cap and the gold bike, and then the race lead Marlena Bjarhed. Bjarhed with the blue cap on there, matching those Swedish colours. Remember, represented Sweden in the World Esports Championship, now battling for top spot here as we see our race leaders push on towards the top of this climb. We're at 32.8 kilometers covered of the 35-kilometer course.
Okay, and as we tick over to 33K done, we have 2K to go and we are down to a group of 3 riders. And Brogan there has put in some massive power to take lead and to push her effort on there. She's gone plus 8 watts per kilo to put an effort in. And this is the first time, Matt, we've seen her make a real effort here rather than closing the gap.
It is, and that could be indicative of what she's got left in the tank. If she can kick at 8 watts per kilo, she's opened a gap. It was at 5 seconds. They're trying to respond, and Bjarhed is the rider who's been caught napping here. I think she's got to respond here. Marlena's got to push. We know she's talented enough. We know she's got the skills to do it, but she's got to respond now. Bauer is in front, and I don't think Bauer is on her best day at the moment. The rider who is on absolutely golden form, I think, is Brogan. She's, I think, got the timing, but maybe she's got the one attack that's going to count. She's got to make it work now. We're now at 1.5 kilometers to go. She's got to climb out here. She's got the gap, though. The chasers behind, have they settled for second and third place? I can't imagine either of these two competitors doing that.
No, and look at the distance she's put on them in such a short period of time. You know, I think this foreshortens actually what we're seeing in front of us in terms of the time gap, because the time gaps are telling us there's 9 seconds here.
So, of course, the moment you go uphill, the speeds go down. The distance decreases for the same time gap because you're traveling slow. It's simple physics, apparently. I was never very good at maths. What I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt is we're going to have a fantastic finale here on MyWhoosh as we come in to the final few thousand meters. We are coming in with 3 riders. Brogan pulled back after an initial attack of the 3 leaders coming in. It looks like they're all back together again. The time is ticking down. We've got Bardovskaya, we've got Bauer, and we've got Brogan. Will our three Bs be able to be on the top? Who's going to be Queen Bee, and who is going to be the lowly worker who did all of the work and doesn't reap the rewards? Well, it is Bauer leading Bjarhead and Brogan, but look at that, nothing between them realistically. Brogan came in to that section basically in the front of it, and then suddenly you can just see those gaps have opened behind. Bardovskaya is distanced in fourth place. Fifth place is Dorothy Gonzalez Roy, and then we have the battle for the first of our second category riders. But watching Bardovskaya up here, 62 revs per minute. Still ticking along, but I've got to say the pace at the front is certainly looking interesting, and those riders continue to kick. So Bardovskaya is going to come through. Remember, they came into the segment with all 5 riders together. That is not going to change, but the leaders are now into their last kilometre here. Bardovskaya losing a huge amount of time here, about 50 seconds.
Yeah, it is, and we're seeing 50 seconds there back in that segment to Bardovskaya. So that first 3 really, really pushed on.
We can. Now the leaders are coming in. They can't be far away from our finish here. We're with Bjarhead. What she got? She's got a lead. Is it going to be enough? She's got about 700 meters to go, but this is a critical 700 meters to go. And I think we're going to see a Bauer incantation. I think Brogan has gone out of our sight. I think she's snapped. And I think it's going to come down to these 2 riders now. Distance is coming down, though, between them as Marlene Bjarhead is on here. Bauer is coming. It's 10.5 the degrees in graded. Percentage graded is kicking in here. Brogan is trying to chase. She's got a massive hill to climb to get up, but they're coming into the tunnels. Bjarhead leading. Bauer in second place. Brogan in Bardovskaya in fourth. Gonzalez in fifth. Will that be done and dusted? I wouldn't bet on it, but Bjarhead is looking good. But look at Bauer come.
Yeah, and we've got 400 metres to go now, Matt, in this race for first place. And both of these riders, it could be anyone's.
It could indeed. Now, as we run into our finish, we have a slight drop, then we have another brutal kick. This is a very fast descent. It's 7%, now 9% on this drop down. But coming up is the wall up to the finish. Here comes the line. It's going to be Bjarhead who takes it. Marlene Bjarhead takes it. And that's how close it was. Gemma Brogan is not going to make it, but Jojo Bauer took that second place. It was fractions between them on the line. And look at that, after that 35-kilometre battle, 2.337 seconds between them. And look at the gap they put into Brogan on that finishing kick. They really did go. They ignited the afterburners and kicked on to the finish. Now Brogan onto the climb. It's going to be a very fine third place here for Gemma Brogan, who put in attacks of her own on the way up. She comes over the line 30 seconds down on our race leader there. But what a 1, 2, 3. Marlene Bjarhead taking top spot. Then Jojo Bauer taking second place. Gemma Brogan taking third. And if that is any indication of what we are going to see in our final that comes up next week, that is going to be amazing. Now you can see Bjarhead's heart rate still at 155. It's dropping quickly, but that was some effort to take the win. And stylish win there, Emma.
It was indeed. You know, at 15K into this race, we had a massive group of nearly 20 riders, and we were looking to see what on earth was going to happen. On the right-hand side, we're seeing fourth place come in and across the line for Bardovskaya. But going back to what I was just saying there, Matt, at 15K in, we had a group of 18 riders, you know, and the attack from the Cat 1 riders took it down to a smaller group. We saw a group of 5 riders become a group of 4 riders, become a group of 3 riders, and then we saw that group of 3 riders play out on that final climb to see the 1, 2, 3 in front of us.
We did indeed, and we've got to say those 5 riders who broke clear, they had to have the pace to be able to stay with that really hot pace at the front. They broke clear, they just were pulled and kept held, and then it accelerated out. Now you can just see the gaps that really have opened up. We're watching Dorothy Gonzalez coming into the finish, but look at this. The chase has been so hot here. It's going to be Olivieri go through. So Olivieri is going to take the win in that second category competition. So she goes through. The team, the Italy B, have got a place in that competition in the category 2, and that is going to be a highest finish in the qualifiers. So Oliveri at 18th and 9th in the first place. They look at that. Garioli takes the second place in that competition. She comes through as well. The winner last week taking second this time round. Sandwiched in between, Dorothy Gonzalez Rey comes in to take 5th place in our first category and 6th place overall. We still got riders out on that course in first, second, and third categories. So we're going to see who is going to take those positions. We're going to try and bring in our 3rd place in the second category of women in and through the line. She can't be far down the hill. I think it could be a real close battle. However, Dexter's going to come through. She's going to take 7th place here today. 8th place here today. So Leonie Dijkstra comes through. The Toyota Creo rider comes through. Lupa comes through for Carly Francis. And there we go. Top 10 rounded out by Team Fitness 10's Elodie Reynard. What a result. Alessia Antico is going to be in behind. So our top 10 here today. Marlena Bjarhead taking top spot. Jojo Bauer taking 2nd. Gemma Brogan taking 3rd, Ursula Bardeskaya taking 4th place, and 5th place being taken by Silvia Alaria Olivieri, who takes the top spot in second category racing. The Tri-Women's team are going to take away the win in the second category racing and take away the top team overall. Repeat that, top team overall for the Tri-Women. An amazing result by them. Don't forget, all this is setting us up for the prize money final next week. Emma, you're going to be back next week. Looking forward to it?
Oh, I'm really looking forward to next week's prize final racing. Both the men's and the women's have been superb today, and I can't wait.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here today. Don't forget, you can catch up with the full results on MyWhoosh.com. And don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel to catch up with us when we're on the way round. Don't forget, you can follow myself, Matt Payne. That is at Matt Fixer Payne. You can follow at Biking Emma. And of course, make sure you click on to MyWhoosh on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. So from everybody at MyWhoosh, thanks for watching Qualifier Race number 4. We'll see you next week for our finals.